Thanks, Alexander. Hello, everybody. Welcome, and thanks so much for having us. We're excited to come and speak to you tonight. So, full disclosure, we decided we'd try a new way of presenting things. Brave, we know, but here we are. We have had a practice, but I'm sure it's going to be just fine. So, I'm going to share with you a link in the chat to a Miro board. So, the first task is whether anybody can access that. So if you could have a look in the chat, click on the link there, and I should be able to see people start arriving shortly. And I'm going to also, just in case that doesn't work, share my screen as well. So you should be able to follow along with me, but also follow along on your own screens as well. And then I just need to put you all back where I can see you as well. And as long as all of that's worked, I think we're good to go. Okay. So I'm going to wait for 20 seconds for anybody to pop something in the chat or say to me that you can't see anything. Hopefully you can see something. Seems good. Okay, brilliant. So welcome. Thanks again, Alexander, for the introduction for Storm, Stephen and myself. So we're here to talk to you about the reality of becoming agile. And we are from the University of Nottingham. The three of us are working there at the moment. We're all Scrum Masters. And I'm going to give a bit of an introduction as to the team that we're in, what the University of Nottingham is and does, what we're doing, and then we'll get into some of the storytelling about how it's been so far. Before we get into the first thing, which actually is an activity for everyone to have a go at, what I would say about what we're going to talk to you about is we're here to share a bit of a war story, if you like. So share how it's been for us, the challenges that we've encountered and how our journey is going. But we're also here to ask for your own expertise, insights, comments, and dare I even say help along the way. So if there's things that we do not have everything figured out yet. If there are things that we're talking about and you think, I can help with that, here's a good idea, we'd love to hear that from you. And there's some space to do that on the Miro board. So please feel free, or stick something in the chat or raise your hand and shout it out. We'd love to hear that. So we'll start with a little activity in a sec, which I'll explain in a moment. Then I'll tell you a bit about the university. I'll give you a little bit of the backstory of how our product and our team came to be. And what the team's focus is. Then I'll hand over to Stephen, who's going to talk about his part of this. Then Storm will do the same. And then there's some bit at the end for me, if we're all still going and feeling good, to sort of finish off with. So first of all, if you could head over to the Miro board itself. I just want us to have a think about our own worlds for a moment. So whether it's your project or your organization or your product or your work or your team or just the slice of the world that you care about at the moment, I'd love if you could do this exercise for us. So just have a think about, with the Agile Manifesto in mind, where does your slice of the world sit against that? This is something that we do with our teams quite regularly to get them to think about, are we, apart from anything else that we do in our practice, are we basically upholding the Agile Manifesto as it stands, just those 4 statements? So do go ahead. You should be able to grab an orange dot, and for each of the statements, just pop it on the line as to where you think you are. So are you generally leaning towards individuals and interactions over the more processes and tools, that kind of thing? So just a couple of moments of reflection. Like all good Scrum Masters, I will set a timer. I'll give us a couple of minutes to do this. We would be nothing without time boxing. I'm sure you'd all agree, that any Scrum Masters among us. I'm just looking on my other screen here so I can see what's happening. Quite a spread already. Interesting. We'll go for a couple of minutes, but I'll try and keep an eye on when the dots stop moving. Take my cue from that as well.
It's like a Beetle drive.
Yeah.
I remember those games from the 90s.
I'm looking at it myself, and I'm definitely saying I'm probably more left leaning.
Yeah.
And in that scale.
So as the dots start to slow down, I can share a little bit about what happens in certainly my team in the university at the moment. We've got a couple of these bits really nailed. We very much are leaning towards individuals and interactions, and we've got a good mindset about responding to changeover following a plan, but customer collaboration and contract negotiation seems to be one that we're battling for. So we're still a bit further towards that contract side than the customer collaboration piece. But actually, I'm really interested to see the spread. It's always interesting when we do these, whether you get everybody at one end or the other, but there's a real mix here. Would anybody like to dare to take themselves off mute and talk a bit about their world for a minute or two? The pressure. Everyone thought they were going to come and just listen, which is also fine.
Yeah, sure. I don't mind. I don't mind.
Thanks, Liam.
I put most of my dots at I would say 3.5, 4. So more in the middle, or yeah, looking more towards the right side. So in the right half, but still work to do, but not bad, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting that nobody's right over the other side. So we've all made some progress in getting to the places that we want to be, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And how we tend to follow this up in our teams is that we will run something afterwards that says, okay, now let's name the specific challenges. So what is it that we're going to pick 1, 2, or 3 things that we can do in the next 1, 2, or 3 sprints, start to knock things over to the side that we want them to. Would anybody else like to share anything at all? Okay, I will move along. That's fine. Don't want to put anybody under pressure, but hopefully that's a moment to just, at the end of our Thursday, those of us who've got bank holidays for Easter tomorrow, just have a little check-in with where things are at for us right now. So let me tell you a little bit about the university. We are based, the 3 of us are based in the Nottingham campuses, but we have campuses across 3 countries. We have 5 actually bases in the UK, and a campus in Malaysia and a campus in China as well. We're made up of 5 faculties, so we pretty much cover the lot, you might say. And there's around 47,000 students. I was sat in the with some assessments of some of the assessments teams, so the teams that do a lot of the focus on exams and processing marks and giving awards, that kind of thing. And I said, how many students have we got? And there was this varied numbers that came to me, but we agreed that if I put the little squiggle before the 47, that was okay. We are a top 20 university in the UK, which we're very proud of. We've got a great sports facility actually in Nottingham. We don't compete necessarily for sports with Loughborough. They very much take the ticket in our local region, but it is a great facility up there, and we've been awarded for that recently, as well as our green spaces. So in Nottingham in particular, as well as the campus being where the students come, work, live, eat, celebrate, play, do sports, our main campus in Nottingham is very much a community place where members of the public walk their dogs and their children play on the park, and there's a big lake there, and it's very much sort of a hub for the community as well. Carl, you mentioned that we're sort of similar in respect to the University of Belgrade as a sort of benchmark for those of you who perhaps aren't as familiar with UK universities. So hopefully that sets the scene a little bit about the spread of work that's going on. And this next slide is called What Has Harry Potter Got to Do with Agile? So this is, for anyone who's unfamiliar, a picture of the unmentionable Lord Voldemort. And the reason why he's on there is because back in 2015, the university embarked on a project to replace its a student record system, which at the time was a system called Saturn. It's a system where students register, and we basically keep all of the data in relation to their journey from the moment they apply to be with us, actually forever, because they stay with us usually as an alumni participant. So we said we were going to change that. We selected an Oracle product called Campus Solutions to provide that solution for all 3 of our campuses for all of our students. And let me tell you, there was some heartache involved in that project. It was called Project Transform, and now nobody's allowed to mention it. That's why we have the Voldemort reference, because it's, you know, eyebrows get raised, people sort of go grey, maybe start to sweat, leave the room. It's very much sort of the thing that nobody wants to talk about.
The triggered trauma from the word Project Transform.
Very much so, yeah. You can sort of see anybody who was here at the time when we mention it, their eyes do sort of sink back into their heads a little bit, and maybe they start biting their nails. And part of that was because that was certainly not an Agile project. It was very waterfall. All of the project team were put in a basement, effectively, in one of our campuses, away from our academic staff, away from our students, away from anybody who might care about this, which, as we know, when it comes to Agile, is definitely not the way we want to go. And there were many other things. It was a big, hairy, scary project, and it got very scary. But that's sort of where this started. So if we think about what happened now, we finished Project Transform, and like all good waterfall projects, the project finished, but there was a long list of change requests of things that were not considered mandatory to implement, but actually we couldn't really work very well without. So shortly after implementation, which finished in 2019, our team was born as a very tiny, hopeful baby, born into the world, with just a few of the remnants of Project Transform and a few hopeful people with, you know, a will in their heart and a fight in their fists. And they began what's now known as a long title, the Education Administration Continuous Improvement Team, but we like to call it ESIT, because that's the other thing the university do well, is give very long names for teams. So ESIT is effectively the product team. It was our job then to reposition ourselves, not as a project, but as a group of people who are going to look after this product, Campus Solutions, and continually improve it. Think about when we've done something, how do we want to make it better for the next time? So we look after the systems, but we don't just focus on systems. We look at everything, people, processes, and technology. We're set up with a program team, and then you can see the circles in the middle there, those are our different delivery teams. So Storm leads one, I lead another, Stephen leads another, and then there's some other Scrum Masters for the other bits. And one of the early things that we needed to do, we sort of got out of the blocks a little bit, but actually what we were doing is just trying to service this long list of leftover change requests, and that was quite painful. And we had anybody who was still happy to talk about Project Transform things was stuck in these old ways of working. So on the right hand side here, you can see a list of what we called the ESIT principles, to start to reposition the thinking around how we work together and fashioning the Agile mindset into our ways of working with the organization. So within ESIT, there wasn't really any Agile experience to start off with. We grew that ourselves, and new people have joined and brought their experience to the team. So we did sort of have to fashion that for ourselves. So I'm going to hand over to Storm now. Hopefully that's laid the land a little bit about the university and our team and what we're here to do. And Storm's going to talk to you a bit about the run team. So hopefully, Storm, this will go really slickly. And I click here and they say hand off and you're driving.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Except for I've not got presented view.
Just click on the slide in the presenter.
Yeah, I'll do.
There you go.
Yeah, hopefully it will do it this way. Anyway, perfect. Smooth. Nobody even noticed. Right. Yes, so I'm one of the Scrum Masters working within ESIT team. The reason we're actually going to talk about different delivery teams is actually there's a bit of variety within how each of the teams is doing, and also its agile journey. So this is the reason I'm just going to cover off the run team and just talk through a bit of who the run team are, where we've come from, and where we're going really along that journey. So a bit about myself as well. I've only actually been at the University of Nottingham for 6 months now. So I've only recently new to this, the higher education way of working and the many complexities which come with that. So here we go, working well. So the run team, who are we? So we are slightly different to some of the delivery teams, because we're not focused on just one particular area of a product like some delivery teams you might be sort of used to. We've set up, like a lot of Scrum teams usually are, cross-functional. So we've got a Scrum Master, business analyst, functional consultants, developers, testers, and automation testers as well. So you can see we're quite a modern, useful, like cross-functional team, and we have the ability to pick work up and deliver it all the way through the life cycle. One thing we are set up to do is, as you can see here, is we solve small issues. Like Charlie was saying, there was that long list of work. We were sort of obliged contractually to support issues which fall into this sort of small criteria. So as we saw earlier with the Agile manifesto, very much on the contractual side of things. So you can see straight away limitations with what we could do. We support all of the campuses. I put 3 campuses, but I meant 3 locations of those campuses. So China, Malaysia, and the University of Nottingham, and all the groups of that system as well. So all the faculty groups and all parts of the campus solution system throughout the cycle of it as well. So this is an interesting one. A lot of you will recognize this sort of common screen. Is that right thing? In regards to where we start and how we started the journey, which was, as Charlie mentioned, the historical issues, the things left over, what weren't defined as must-haves within Project Transform, which evidently were. And so what we had was a long list. I'm not using the word backlog, I'm using the word list because it was not prioritized. It was the list of items, change requests. And what they did was come to us and go, right, my area, these are my top 10 issues. It wasn't really prioritization. Everyone just went, these are my top 10. Can you create a Gantt chart and tell me when you're going to fix them? As you can see with every Agile journey, it was waterfall. The estimation, the requirements up front, please create this lovely diagram of when everything's going to be released. And that was very much how it was. What we got was a lot of people shouting, and we serviced the people who shouted the loudest. Again, there's probably a lot of people sat in this going, I'm used to something very similar within the organization. And that was very much where we started from. It was in the usual sort of way where everything was estimated up front. We had to oblige with contracts. So if it was over 30 days, we handed it back. It got moved around teams again and became very complex. The next phase was the backlog was born. So what we actually created was a whole backlog within SharePoint, which you can see, this is slowly iterated since the initial one, but what you can see is the fact that we had ID references, so the business were able to view it. We had simple statuses, we had titles, descriptions, those details you slowly get from a backlog, so to speak, with items being handed off to delivery teams. And then we actually started with the creation of a value score. Again, as you can see my note up here, it's a value score, because what it is a bit like a risk, where it's just an amount of people might be impacted, so rate it between 1 and 5. But it did support at that point with actually giving priorities and giving value to what we're actually doing with the business as a whole and how we can service people. Additionally, like one of the reasons ESIT was there was to try and give visibility of actually what this work looks like. With a lot of historic things, people were very much used to PIDs or project initiation documents, huge scoping requirement documents with loads of information in. And what we tried to do was then create this consolidated backlog list, so to speak. And it did supply some of that information and did supply that. So what next was then we started to be able to get requests in from the business. So what then happened was created forms, and we ended up working in similarly like you would do from a service desk. So you get a request in, people raise it, It then gets looked at, as you can see within this funnel process, which we will discuss later. And what will happen is a group of people will look at it. They will then hand it off to demand and understand whether we have the capacity. Then it gets handed off to a list of the delivery teams as a whole. So as you can see, very much it's bit of work item, no communication with the business. It's very much, here's some work, hand it, hand it, hand it, hand it. And as a lot of you will probably see at the top, this became a very Scrum-fall way of working. So we had the delivery teams, we started working iterations, but again, we're still having the requirements up front. We're having planning up front. We're estimating everything and we're going, can we do it? Right, here's the contract. Right, now do a bit of development. We're still developing everything as a feature. We're not breaking work down, so to speak. And then everything's tested at the end, handed off to the business for a second phase of testing at the end. And then we look to deliver at the end of the sprint. So as you can see, it's on the journey. We're starting to put the fundamentals in. We're starting to have the foundations, but we're still following in and falling into some of those practices, really. It was an improvement. It did help the process. It helped on boards with the business into how we're starting to work and starting to use certain terminology like backlogs. We're starting to bring in sprints. We're starting to onboard product owners in certain areas. What this actually meant and what you see is a huge shift to how we actually are now. It looks like there's a long time period between these areas, but actually this happened within 6 months. So you can see how quick we've actually been managing to pick up work and actually focus and work within the team to actually work on improvements. We are saying now we're actually working a bit of a, again, some of my merging words, Scrum ban. So actually we've worked out, because of how the work comes into our backlog, how the work's being looked at, we can actually work with the business to create high level priorities. You can see the board we're using at the moment. Everything's really easy and actually managed and prioritized at every level. We've got the priorities coming from the business. We've got value being driven. We're mapping things to events which happen throughout the academic year. So it actually means that we actually get that visibility. The prioritization happens because we've got that reasonable high level strategy and theory. I say in theory, sitting above how the team works, that we can quite easily map stuff. We have that visibility. It's easy conversations. And it actually means that we can deliver quite a lot of small functionality. We're changing the contractual view. So instead we said, like we mentioned, that 30 days, instead of it being limitation, what we're now really is doing a time box. So we go, instead of going, it's over 30 days, let's move it off. We go, what can we do in 30 days? What value can we give within that 30-day period? We can give you X amount. Okay, the next work item we need to be reprioritized in our backlog. And actually the business now is slowly shifting and they're understanding that and building on that. And they're slowly understanding that actually getting something is better than getting nothing. And it's a very weird shift because the university loves big bang delivery. They love everything in one go. They hate lots of little things coming to them. It's a very strange mentality. And this is where it's slowly shifting. And we're slowly building in that iteration, the time boxing. Actually, we can deliver something in a shorter period and we can deliver value early. And that's really helped with the run team as a whole. One thing that we do and sort of need to caveat around it is actually we deliver lots of small changes, which are very technical, back end, the creation of queries, smaller, simpler tasks. So we didn't have as much complexity as some of the other teams with some of the work we're getting in. Like we said, we've got our own challenges. So actually the way we work is we don't have a specific product owner. So as much as we try and be agile in the sense with a Scrum team and actually trying to do that, we don't have that sort of the day-to-day communication with a business owner or a product owner. So what we've had to do is create this template where what we do is have monthly prioritization sessions with the business. So we have to have sessions with, it only happened this morning, where I had, I think, best part of 20 people from around the users and going, right, what are your priorities? What they'll do is run through the backlog with us, and we do it within the Azure DevOps, the tool we're using for actually the managing it all. We do it within that session and we go, right, this is your priority one. Here you go. You can see it. We will pull it across into the next column, ready as a priority one. People can have that conversation between everyone. So we've stopped those walls with people having one-to-one communications like away from everyone else. No one gets the visibility. They just think it's because people are shouting. We've actually stopped that and had the conversation together. So people have visibility why something's a priority. People are going, okay, that's a priority one because we need it because of a KPI of that area of the business. So people are there actually on board. We get less pushback, which I think is really supported in how the run team are doing and how we've managed to sort of get the buy-in from the business. We get clear priorities, clear alignment, and it means that we can actually just start pulling the work, which is a real shift from stuff being pushed. And that's where we've actually noticed within the last few sprints. And this is real time. This is literally, so sprint 14 finished on Tuesday this week. And you can see over the last few weeks or over the last few sprints, every single time we're delivering more and more product backlog items. This last sprint's actually a record for us. We actually managed to close off, I think it was 27 items total, which for a small cross-functional team is really impressive because that change in mindset, the clarity in priorities means that actually the team are very clear on what they need to be working on. There's less sort of having to reach out all the time going, oh, what should I do next? I've got a bit of capacity. What should I do next? The team's very autonomous. It's really good. It's really positive working. And it's actually because everyone's slowly becoming on board with, if you work in a way where everything's visible, it's transparent, it means that team know what they're doing. They have the autonomy and they actually feel comfortable with being able to just pick up the next item because they know it is, and it builds the confidence within them. And it's really good to see that within the team. And it's like I said, it's sort of, we're moving away from those contracts. We're doing face-to-face communications. We're actually going, right, what can we supply rather than what are we limited to? And it's really nice to see that improvement. I mean, I'm not going to say we're all singing or dancing with the most amazing team, but it's really good to see the journey that actually the run teams come on from being a waterfall back list of items in a couple of months to then be really pushing towards wanting to improve, wanting to take on Kanban methodology and really trying to push the Agile journey out. Like I said, with this last little slide really is the fact is we have come a long way, but yet we have still got quite a long way to go as well. We've got a lot coming up in the future and there's more challenges, but what we're really just trying to focus on really is really trying to keep driving forwards and keep looking forwards, but also get the opportunity to reflect on where we've come from as well. And now to get Stephen's input and give his overview of the assessments team. So hopefully
you can try the handover option.
And there you go, smooth.
Nice.
Brilliant, well done, guys. Sorry, I'm just looking at the text.
I'm starting to feel more under pressure now to make sure it works for me now when I get through my bit as well. So thanks for that. Hi everybody. So I'm Scrum Master for the assessments team, and I hope you don't mind, but I've drawn another franchise in sort of my choice of images. I know we talked about Voldemort, but mine are more leaning towards Lord of the Rings. So I'm Scrum Master for, I'd say, the assessments team within ESIT. We look after software and processes linked to assessments throughout the University of Nottingham. And as mentioned by my colleagues there, we do cover all locations and all sites in part of that. And just to provide probably a bit more context, I'm a lot newer than Storm is as well. I joined in January, and what I would like to do is just take you on a journey that I've been on really since the start of January, and show you some progress that has been made, but also acknowledging, you know, that there's much more to do. And even from my own point of view, really, if in terms of perhaps there should have been some things I should have considered in a different way of doing things. So I'll just go through this first slide now. So as I said, I'm Scrum Master of the ESIT assessment team. When I joined in January, there was some positives in and around that whole Scrum piece and the Agile piece in terms of how the team had been working, the sort of the sprint structure, you know, the feedback cycle was in place. It was re-embedded. Scrum ceremonies or events were in place, and the team itself, and I have quite a large team as well at the moment. I think have around, top of my head, about 11, 12 people, if I'm counting some members of the team that support us from our sort of umbrella ESIT team. And there was good commitment to those Scrum events. There was a lot of empowered voices within that team, a couple that weren't so much, but the voices were being heard, which was the main thing as well, and it was being encouraged. So there was that openness that was starting to come, empowerment, more particularly from some of our overseas colleagues. Open questions and inspection was happening because the level of work that is required within the assessment team have been and are quite vast and very complex. So the at times there's been challenging conversations to sort of pick apart and understand the items of work that we need to look into and ultimately identifying a solution for them, and that has taken a large amount of time as well due to the complexity. There was good operating practices demonstrated in the team daily stand-ups. People were taking ownership. They were taking in turns to run the board, discuss items. There was an early stage of really providing estimates and sizing work, but ongoing was sustaining that, but also confirming the best fit for the team. And one key thing as well that I saw within the first sort of month and when I sort of think back and think retrospectively is the team were getting massive headwinds from our wider business and stakeholders, and the team was tagged with they don't deliver anything, and we started to deliver some smaller pieces, but ultimately as well we're now starting to deliver some massive items of work, and that ownership of those large complicated products that we've been working on was crucial to that and being able to do that. Some sort of cons that I came across was the sprint planning event was kind of a hybrid of sprint planning and backlog refinement, and causing the duration of that event to escalate and increase at times across a couple of days, and to the point where I think towards the end of that event in particular, a lot of the team were quite fatigued. There is slightly, but it is improving. There is a lack of clear prioritized structure or a structured backlog. The team, when I started, was under-resourced. There was quite a lot of pressure, really, and many hats being worn by the product owner, operating as a subject matter expert and a business analyst. The DevOps backlog was confusing, and because of how and items that were sat in that backlog within DevOps, it reduced opportunities to use wider DevOps functionality to its most positive and maximum, because using it in that form that it used to be in was very confusing. Consistent approach, like I just mentioned in the pros, the consistent approach to estimate and size work. So there was some attempts at estimating, but there wasn't a consistent, sustainable approach at that point to size the work. Limited time for Scrum Master and the product owner to engage with each other, due to a number of different aforementioned there items. And I think I've touched on it already in terms of massive headwinds from the wider business and the stakeholders, and some items that might have fallen over before I started, that there was quite a fixed mindset in terms of a level of anxiety around certain stakeholders and worried about making a mistake. And there was some siloing as well, and inconsistency of engagement among certain team members. But by me sort of identifying these pros and cons, it allowed me sort of to think to myself, well, what could I do and how can I work with the team and address some of these things and ultimately improve that experience for them. So observing those current challenges, identify priorities to focus on that would best serve and address the team's overall needs. Since I've started in January, I've been working very well with the team. The team have started to become a lot more receptive. But first thing that me and then the leadership started to sort of escalate and drive was the need for more resource. due to the volume and complexity of the projects that we were involved in. Happy to say that after some ongoing conversations, we now got 2 business analysts and a subject matter expert join the team. One of them, thanks to their previous experience within another one of the USIT teams and their overall university experience, has hit the ground running, which is fantastic. And we're currently embedding the other business analysts as we speak. Initial activities carried out by myself and a BA to tidy up the current DevOps backlog. We had a massive sort of epic listed in the backlog. I did want to get you an image, but because we've already dealt with it, I couldn't really pull it off anymore. But there was an epic that was called an unprioritized work, and I think it had over 160 items in it, and it was causing quite a lot of confusion. And some have been started, some of them hadn't even been looked at. So the first thing I wanted to do is remove it, clear the decks. These items are old, no one has looked to them. So with the BA, we were, from our perspective anyway, and understanding, we were able just to go through and be a bit ruthless. I had to get this action confirmed by wider sort of team reporting and team members to make sure that this wouldn't cause any instability or concern. So we did that. I then that freed up the use and the ability to then look to use the sprint backlog option and prioritize items that were in the sprint in that backlog as to sort of like the typical sort of 1 to whatever number of items you've got as in terms of listing that priority. I went through with the BA and started to add a lot of descriptions against PBIs that we understood, and started to work with the acceptance criteria. Updating and removing obviously backlog items, removal of the epic, like I said, and acceptance criteria and descriptions added to PBIs and tasks. And when I went around this time, when I first started, I noticed that there was members of the team that were asking that were mentioning they didn't fully understand what acceptance criteria is. So I developed some bite-sized learning and communicated it to the team. In addition, just kind of support the backlog piece, because I knew that was the biggest thing that a lot of it all stems from, really, was to develop a template for one of our product managers to help visualize things that may come up. Efforts to consistent estimation. In terms of work items, we started from sort of the smallest items first, within that could derive from PBIs in terms of just hours, just to help us better manage and track that work through the sprints. And this was my approach, really, is I wanted to get things in a position that would reduce the disruption during sprint planning, just so I could clear the wood through the trees and you know, allow people that headspace really just to think about the wider backlog piece next, by reducing that disruption in the sprint planning. Unfortunately, I don't think it quite landed in the way that I hoped. But a positive action of that is members of the team started really to shift their mindset, or their mindset started to shift thanks to sort of, you know, the ongoing drive and need for this backlog, and started to think about PBIs and scoring on themselves. But I just wanted to as well, you might have noticed that I've put some funny faces on the slides. This is our good old Prince George in the UK. And just wanted to demonstrate how I felt at the time with some of these things. So as a result of the actions that I've already mentioned that have taken place with myself and the team, the post-its that you can see are direct outputs as a result of the sprint retrospectives within our team. And I wanted to sort of also flag out that it is only the sprint planning where the challenges lie. Our other events have been really good and massively improved over the last few weeks. And just some of the views that have come from the team, you can all see there on the post-its: clear directions to act, clear data in DevOps to be worked upon, reduce PBI tasks without assignees. So to get that level of commitment and accountability with people in the team, I'm happy to say that last 2 sprints, or this sprint, actually, we operate in 3-week sprints. There's been no PBIs or tasks without anyone assigned to it. Drive the business analyst to improve clarity, work, and PBIs. So it's all positive, and it's clear outputs there as a result of the efforts that have been made up until this point. So I'll just go back onto the next slide. So yeah, my approach was to identify upcoming priority backlog items and refine to reduce impact on the sprint event. So identify those priority PBIs that we were likely to pick up in conjunction with the product owner, and just reduce that disruption within the sprint planning. Progress on that had been slowed by the opportunity really to schedule, identify and discuss these items with the product owner. And the main reason for that, I felt, was the demand, volume and complexity of the work that we were looking at. The product owner was still being drawn into a lot, and kind of at the coalface a little bit. So I think my thoughts there and approach to try and prioritize and reduce the disruption in the sprint planning probably wasn't the best way to go about it initially. I've mentioned about within the team about silo behavior, and I think that my approach there might have seemed a bit silo. But by me driving this and just having the conversations with people independently, the mindset has shifted with the team in terms of the importance now of the backlog. And I'm happy to say that independently amongst themselves, they've had those conversations around PBIs and sizing them, and potentially discussions on a structure that we can apply to our backlog that makes it, that increases that transparency, that openness, all those good things, and makes it easier to understand. And if you can see by the blue post-its, these are actions that have been identified by the team through that retrospective mechanism as well. And I think it's by far, for me, one of the most important events of Scrum is that retrospective, because it records all this good stuff. And they've started to see the need now for us to look at these in terms of try and name shorter but describe more for PBIs, look into common groups and categories for all the PBIs, all get involved in creating and updating tasks, which I was not able to get to at that point because of the approach that I had adopted. So now that these conversations are happening, I've now got regular calls in with the wider team to help drive this, get everyone involved in the refinement activities, and estimating again, and estimate together. And like I say, we've started the estimation. I think the key thing is to sustain it in a consistent way. So big old smiley face there from me, reflecting back and sort of introspection on myself, really. A little frustrated that the approach didn't really land how I wanted it to, but you live and learn. And the way in which we structure our backlog and everything kind of feeds into the next slide, and our move to possibly a nirvana, but also a different approach, which I'm trying. So the need to get everyone involved, which was backed up in our last retrospective, all get involved in that backlog piece. I felt instead of the team continually reacting to the pressures of the work that's coming in, the complexities, the changes in that landscape, there was a really good opportunity for us to have a pause. And a lot of the work and that big work items that we'd been developing ever since before Christmas, we were able to finally get completed and promoted, delivered, uploaded into a rehearsal test environment that was going to provide us with some key outputs and hopefully priorities we can use moving forward. So I felt there was an opportunity there. We'd done a lot of our main work. The outputs were likely to come out in the next couple of weeks, and I felt let's have a pause. As a team, we just stop that sprint of 3 weeks. We have a week where we take stock. We look at the outputs of this rehearsal. We look at the top 3 items that are in our ESIT backlog. We give ourselves a time to reflect and think about how we want to proceed for the next quarter. And by this point, the BAs and themselves had discussions around best methods to size, some thoughts on an approach on how to size and structure our backlog, and inform us and the opportunity for us to do that would be in this pause action, which I've got the visual there of the calendar invite. But I felt it was an opportunity for us to, as a team, stop and just have a big retrospective with all these other streams of outputs coming in, to then help us plan our work and structure our backlog accordingly and prioritize it, at least for the first 3 months, with a structure. And that then feeds into probably our next point in the discussion around that. This is scheduled, and the team are now working together to come up with a solution around how we structure that backlog as well, which is great. And I love a retrospective, so I'm also looking at this as an opportunity to do a retrospective of the last 3 months since Christmas, since it started as well, just to gauge on the team. Like doing the odd icebreaker. I'm going to go through our Scrum values with them, as well as our team values and the university's values again. But also I want us to reaffirm what our roles are within the team, acknowledge the importance of our roles. So I've got some role profiles in there, but also once the team have viewed those role profiles within our roles, decide how we want to work together with each other in a collaborative manner and reflection of that growth mindset, which I'm hoping that the team are going to give me some more valuable insight on, and got some more post-its like what I've used in this talk today. So that is the aim, that is the hope. This is the new approach that I've now got planned in, and I'm hoping to bring some and use it as a springboard to leap forward in a more sort of structured and dynamic way. So yeah, that's me. And this is hopefully going to be the end result. Sorry, I couldn't help another Lord of the Rings view there of giving us that clear sight on the horizon with a bit of sunshine as well. So I'm going to have a go now at handing it back over to Charlie. So definitely feeling the pressure here. So I'm going to find Charlie and click hand off.
That's it.
And has that worked? Fantastic.
It's worked.
Yay.
So where?
Biggest win for me.
We nailed it. So that's all the handovers out the way. We can work our
smooth from here.
Yes. Smooth sailing, we'd hope, from here. Thanks, Stephen and Storm. And yeah, even actually just listening to you two, I know we've been through obviously all of this content, and we talk a lot in sort of our little Scrum Master hub from week to week. But even just hearing you talk, both of you, there's things that I didn't even realize. So yeah, very, very much still a lot to do, but we as a group, I think, are feeling the momentum of that now and feeling like it's possible at last. The fog is clearing and the sun is coming up. So with that in mind, yeah, with that in mind, I'm going to talk a little bit about leveling up and some of the sort of explain some of the conversations that we've been having within the three of us, really, with Carl's input as well, which is welcomed, as to where we might go next. And you might remember Storm just talked about that funnel process. So effectively, it operates at the moment in a bit of a bit like a service desk. Anybody in the university can go there, create a wish and put it into the bucket and give it some criteria, and maybe it will get to the top of the list one day. So we presented this to our program team actually this week, and we went with them with a really bold statement and said our funnel and that SharePoint backlog fundamentally undermine some key Agile principles. And there's definitely been a case for that process to exist up to this point. But what we're saying is we're outgrowing it, and it's going to really hold us back from getting to our next level of Agile practice if we don't start to think about what the alternative could be. And we knew that that would be a little bit of a shocker. So we put Captain Kirk in there with his quiz.
Captain Picard, we've used another
sorry.
franchise now. The franchises we're bringing into this presentation.
I don't watch it, sorry, I got it wrong, yes. God, quite right, I stand corrected. But we knew that there would be sort of a double take, like, I'm sorry, like, what are you saying? We invented this because we thought it was a good idea, and we wanted to be sensitive of the fact that, you know, it's served its purpose so far. So this is kind of what happens right now. We talked to our program team and said, look, this is what happens. There's people around the globe in our 3 campuses, UK, Malaysia, China, and they have ideas and they have problems and they want to tell us about them. So they go to SharePoint and they put their big idea into the system. They don't talk to anybody. And then it goes to a process which we call RAM. So in English, RAM is the name for a male sheep, hence the picture. But what it stands for, the acronym, is the Rapid Assessment Meeting. And it just means our program team meet every day for 15 minutes and kind of guess which delivery team this idea, wish, or problem should be assigned to. What tends to happen then is it goes over the wall to one of the delivery teams, and then delivery teams pass it to and from each other whilst they're deciding whether it's theirs, whether it's somebody else's, should we give it back to the program team to look at again? Does it need to go back to the person who created it? So there's a lot of waste here. It goes, you know, many times before it lands in the place where the work could even start to be done. But eventually it will, and it ends up in somebody's product backlog. So either Storm's or Stephen's or mine or one of the other delivery teams. But we've got some problems with that. So we tried to overlay for our program team what's going wrong here. This initial piece, we're missing that conversation. So again, even just thinking about the activity that we did first, are we valuing the interactions with our customers more than the fact that the SharePoint process works? And the short answer is no. For the time being, not in practice. I think in principle, everybody signs up to that. Nobody would say, oh, no, we like the process. We all want to have the conversation, but we're not practicing what we preach. The second part is that we're very good at telling people where to go to raise them. So go to the SharePoint. Here's a nice site we've created, and here's a user-friendly form we've done for you, and here's some other tools that will help you do that. But we don't do very well at telling them when they should do that. So what that means for our teams is that we have this constant stream of unmonitored, unquantified, and not discussed work. And our product owners are actually being distracted by that when they should be working in sprints or sort of with a further ahead view, but not sort of infinity. You know, we want them to be focused maybe 3, 6, perhaps 12 months with some big themes, and actually they get their attention's getting drawn away from that regularly, potentially daily. The rapid assessment meeting was also assigning things to Scrum Masters and not product owners. And I always say in the nicest possible way, I don't really care what the work is. I'm here to make sure that the team are enabled to do the work, that blockers get removed, that they have what they need. I don't have a say on what really gets done when, unless it's going to breach capacity or we're talking about those sorts of things. So that was quite an easy one to say, can you just give it to them and not us? And that will help. But then, of course, is keying into that distraction issue. We also identified that there's a lack of clarity around, between the team that get together to assign these items and the delivery teams themselves. And that's where this back and forth was coming. The people in that rapid assessment meeting are mostly people from our program team. They quite rightly don't understand the detail of what particular items necessarily are. Sometimes the items come to us lacking detail as well, so they don't really stand a chance. So they're looking really for keywords of this sounds like it should go to that delivery team, but really not sure. So again, another contributing factor as to where we're seeing this waste come from. And then the other really simple one that we just hoped we could fix really quite straightforwardly was that we're actually creating duplication for ourselves. So by having the SharePoint as an entry for backlog items, we don't manage our work in SharePoint, of course not, because it's not a work management tool. We do that in DevOps, as Storm and I think Stephen also intimated to earlier. So we have to duplicate it. We have to make sure that the thing that was raised in SharePoint is ready in DevOps to be worked on, and then we have to keep those in sync so that we're trying to answer some of that visibility question, making sure that the person who has raised that item can see the latest status and where it is. So along the way, we had some questions that we need to answer. We haven't figured all of this out yet, but we knew we were asking the right sort of things. So in summary, what we said is this is undermining our product owners' focus and attention, and it's creating a long queue, which we know is bad. We like short queues because they can be worked on and completed much quicker. There's work to do just to maintain this process, and it really makes product road mapping hard to do because the items that come in are so small and specific. I suppose it's worth saying the other thing that sometimes happens is people will actually ask us for a particular thing rather than describing a state that they want to be in or the vision for the future. So they might just write something like, we need a new field called this that has 3 values in it. Now, without that person understanding all the realms of the rest of the product, it's impossible for them to know as to whether that's the right solution or not. So yeah, undermining a lot of the product road mapping. And SharePoint is not the best tool to visualize what the work is that's going on and do reporting. We have had some absolutely heroic efforts in our ESIT team by a couple of individuals to make the very best of what we have at the moment, and they've done some great work. But ultimately, we think we can do a lot better. So what we said was, if we want to go into the land of sunshine, and this looks very idyllic and flowers and beautiful landscapes, what might that be? And what we presented is that we, as Stephen spoke about, inspect our operational events at regular event retros. So not just sprint retros. Go with our operational teams to talk about the last time that we had a graduation. How did that happen and what might be better about it next time? And that we get really close to our customers to hear from them what it is they want for their future. So instead of that globe in the middle, we still have the people and they're still having their ideas and they still have problems. But now those conversations are led by the operational teams and they're facilitated by us and the product owner. And we have them regularly and we get to decide how regular we have them based on what's needed. And they'd focus on what happened in the last period. When are we going to do those set of things again? And what do we want to be better about the next time we do them? So then we're hoping we might get something more of a product roadmap. So we're thinking about a vision for the whole experience, the whole product, the whole service, not just a field in a database and what that might do for us. And that's not all ESIT work either. It's for the operational teams to choose other improvements that they might want to make for the next time as well. And that might be a big activity that's held over a day, an afternoon, perhaps 2 days, depending on the work to get through and the things to discuss. So now the product owner comes away from a highly interactive conversational session with operational teams and can shape the delivery team's backlog in the context of what that part of the university is going to be doing in the next 3, 6, 12 months. And we knew we had to sell this a little bit to our program team and our product director and sort of say, what are you going to get for you? If you let us have a go at this, what are you going to get for it? So feels like an easy way for us to help them get detail for the roadmaps. That's it, trying to answer a question that they've got going on right now. A nice short list of improvements for each team that's prioritized, and we know where to focus effort, and we can put everything else down mentally so we can focus on the things that we know are going to deliver the biggest value for now. And then the other part here at the bottom is about getting clarity on where the resources are needed. So we are currently, our delivery teams are focused on particular groups of activities. So Stephen's talked about assessments. One of the others is admissions. So when students are applying, when they're doing all of their exams and getting the right marks and applying those to degree courses that they want to come and join us for, that's another area. Right now, what we don't do very well, if at all, is flex and bend our team shapes and our team allocations to where the work is needed. Often assessments have a lot of things to do when other teams have still a lot, but not quite as much. So we feel by doing this, we'll be able to actually look at the resource profile across the whole of the ESIT team and not just within each delivery team as it stands. And the good news is we do have a good example of this already. So our our admissions team finished their confirmation and clearing process in end of September. And then on the 2nd of October, invited us to go and facilitate for them to say, you guys have all got day jobs, but we are experts in facilitating big sessions and finding out things and asking questions and helping you decide where to go next. And so that's what we did. And it really helped shape their backlog for the next phase. So how do we get to that beautiful picture? We thought, well, we can learn from admissions and start small. We do have to do some positioning for our product owners and making sure that they're the source of the work. Get away from this SharePoint list that's just throwing things at us. Because as Storm mentioned, the run team don't have a single product owner. They have a number of process areas actually that they service is probably the better way to put it. It'd be good for us to establish some accountabilities out there in the operation and say, okay, if you look after finance, when you want to do things in campus solutions or around those processes, we'll come and talk to you, you come and talk to us, and we can set up that network. I think the word change champions got thrown around slightly as well, didn't it, Storm, for that sort of. But the biggest one in red is just stop that SharePoint list growing, because in the meantime, we're trying to turn this huge ship to face a better direction. And we really want to sort of stop that noise whilst we try and do it. So we're going to do an experiment, and Stephen touched on this just now in his presentation, which was we are running at the moment a rehearsal for exam processing. It means we upload marks into the system, we process those, and then we should have a number of awards that we can give to students, and we understand if they need to resit exams and lots of those other bits and bobs that sit around that. So we're practicing that anyway, our operation of doing that. And then as Stephen discussed, we're going to stop and we're going to say, this was the practice. When we do this for real in June, how do we want it to be better? That's our backlog. And then we'll do it for real in June, and ESIT, as guys, will go and shadow how that goes for real. And then we'll stop again and we'll say, we practiced it and we learned some stuff, and then we did some new things. And then we've looked at how that went. And the next time that we want to do that, how much better do we want it to be? What are the high value items that we can pick up? So with a bit of luck, with all of Stephen's hard work so far since January, joining the university, really had a lot of people, a lot of complexity, a lot of items, a lot of work, a lot of everything to really sort of saddle. These couple of breathing spaces for that team especially will really help operationally in that team, but also could be a really great selling point for us as to why we think this is a better idea than that funnel, which keeps some of us up at night as it stands. So that's kind of the end of our talk. There is definitely opportunity to ask any questions. If you don't want to take yourself off mute, if you come out of the presentation and then zoom out, you'll see that under each section, my screen's just frozen, of our talk, there's a bar up here. I'm getting there. It's just, here we go. If you have any questions, there's a couple of but I didn't press that. It's all going wrong now, Storm. Presenting fine. It's when you don't want to present that the issues come. Okay, here we go. So yeah, there's some space for questions. If you don't want to take yourself off mute and speak, you could also pop something in the chat, or if you want to, say hello, come on the video, unmute and ask us something or offer us some advice. We'd love to hear it.
Or even similar experience, because really this came about from actually us looking internally at delivery teams and going, right, our delivery teams are working okay. What about the wider team? What about the wider influence that we could potentially have? So this is it. We really were from just 3 Scrum Masters doing what Scrum Masters do, focusing on the team inwards, and actually then started looking outwards and going, how can we improve more and how can we do more? And so any sort of experiences similar from your organizations is also really good to hear, because obviously we're still new. Yeah. We're still dipping our toes in the hot water really, to try and push our improvement ideas. So any suggestions of how you've dealt with this is also very useful to us.
Definitely. For a while it was just me, so I was so pleased when other Scrum Masters started turning up, and I was like, thank God I can ask for help or make a plea.
Yeah.
So guys, this last couple of minutes before we end the session is reserved for your questions. Don't be so quiet. I'm not used to see you as quiet as I see you right now. So be free to ask any questions. I'm pretty sure that there is a plenty space to ask any questions.
Not even just questions, any advice or support.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, we're all up for hearing.
I'll ask a question just to keep you on your toes. I just put in the chat, I thought it was brave. This idea of stopping is quite brave, and I don't know if it's a practice that people do in other organizations. I don't know if anyone's done that themselves, or they think they might be able to do it in their organization. That's a question to everyone, really.
I mean, I can answer that, but I don't want to steal the spotlight from someone else. I've done it previously, and it took a huge ask with a big organization. I worked in a consultancy firm supporting BP, so British Petroleum, and we supported a digital transformation project. And the agency I worked with was really an Agile advocate. Everything was to do with really supporting Agile practices. And we turned around to BP mid-project and went, we need to stop, we need to reset, we need to clear down the backlog. And it took a lot of negotiation, and there was a cost surrounding it, but actually they took it fully on board. And actually what we managed to do was save a lot of money in the long run. It was a huge practice, and it was not well received initially, but then eventually they bought onto it, and other practices then did it. They did it at a huge scale level against the whole of their similar sort of organization, the digital transformation area. And it was a huge success. But again, it's like anything, it's a bold statement to tell everyone to stop, but there are huge, we really reap the reward from it.
Yeah, I'm discovering more and more about, the courageous bit of the Agile thing, being courageous and, doing things that are counterintuitive, aren't they, really, to a lot of people in the culture you're in, I guess. Yeah.
I want to do it because I wanted people to step back a little bit, if I'm honest. I wanted them, they've been operating at such speed, such pressure, such closeness to the work and the complexity of it. I wanted to create a bit of a breathing space to allow them to take a step back. Or fire break, whichever analogy works, really.
I used to work for someone, and they always used to say reflection is the key to the right direction. As cheesy as it sounds, it's very much true. Yeah.
It's like I said about the importance of retros. For me, the most important event in Scrum and Agile is the retro.
Yeah.
It's that empiricism. You learn more each time you go through that circle, and you learn through the retro. You capture it all. You pick items that you think are priority that you need to fix or improve upon, and it's just that natural sort of culmination of that cycle and that feedback cycle that is a springboard to improve each time. And yeah,
I'm not sure among the group of us what the sort of split is in terms of agile roles, sort of how many other Scrum Masters may be on with us today. But I would say that bravery is often something that even in sort of more waterfall projects is overlooked. It's always the project manager's job to give the bad news. And I've been on a couple of waterfall projects where I've had to go and say, I really think we should stop this. There's not a good outcome if we keep going. And yeah, it's hard to land that message, definitely. But actually, there was something that Carl, you said earlier in the week when you'd had a chat with our product director, and you'd mentioned something to him, and he said, "You've given me something to think about." And so I kind of think that's our role, particularly Scrum Masters, is to just drop little bombs, hopefully small ones, but just give people who are paid to do that big thinking something to think about. That is part of our responsibility, I think.
I think it falls
I
into
have a question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we are talking about reflecting or revisiting things, or but when we are in the sprint, like back to back, when one's done, one day is done, and the next sprint starts the next moment. So in this situation, do we really have that? I mean, the users should also be accepting this, right? So they have their own demands and asks, I mean, related to their own business to be carried out the next day. So can we really take that kind of a small pause? And would there be users who would give us that pause?
I don't know who wants to answer.
So
Do you want to go first?
Who wants to answer that?
I mean, the first part that the question broke up for me, so if I'm happy to have a run at it. Can you repeat the question?
Asking about when we're in sprint and we're working up to the day the sprint finishes, and then the next day, we start the new sprint, and our users have their own operational work that must continue. I think the question is more about how do we ask for that pause, and how do we solicit the people that we need to come with us in that mindset.
Yeah, how, and is it really possible?
Well, from the example which is happening with myself, I saw an opportunity and I seized upon it, which was we had an event, a key event that's happening called the rehearsal, and there was going to be even if we were still on that continuation really of the sprint cycle, there was going to be the need to have a look at the outputs of that. And I just saw the opportunity in which to do that and take a pause of, it's essentially 3 days out of a week. So if it wasn't for that key event, I mean, with my experience at Jaguar Land Rover, we scheduled a quarterly key event where it was called quarterly business review. So we had that structure in place where we were able to do that cycle, but then revisit with the wider business. So from my perspective, if the opportunity isn't there already, have discussions about could it be a valuable mechanism if we adopt it at the right time based on any pre-existing events you might have, or a structure that you could put in place. And again, it's down to that open communication, that transparency, and ultimately as well, what is the priority of work that you've currently got? Is the demand and the priority of work potentially going to have an adverse effect on what's coming through? If you were to pause, if it can wait 3 days, if you're still able to deliver with key priorities, and just if you're monitoring capacity and what the team can achieve, and you can still deliver those items, even if you were to take a week out, it won't disrupt the flow so much. So there's a few things, I think, and there's a few things that you have to consider. It wasn't a decision I made lightly from my perspective either. So it's openness again as well for me. it's being brave and having conversations with people in my team. I think we need to stop, or don't know about that. Well, we need to be brave in approaching it and talking about what value it could bring. And I think that's where it can ultimately boil down to is what is the value of stopping against what is the value of that particular item that you need to deliver, and what is more important. It's short-term disruption for long-term gain as well.
We found that some of our operational teams don't know how to do this, Barani. They don't know how to stop and reflect. So we approach them sometimes very kindly to say, would you like us to come and do you a favor? Would you like us to come and help you gather all of your thoughts about how something's just gone, and we'll take all of that away and we'll make it understandable, make sense of it. And often they're really grateful. If I was going to offer some advice, I would say try and do it on a small scale, maybe on one piece of delivery. So almost like a sprint retro, but maybe around something specific, and get one of your customers really on board, and then make them go and tell everybody else how useful it was. And that's the way we've done it at the university, is sort of getting some momentum with other operational areas and getting them to go and sell it to everybody else on our behalf. And we just turn up with the toolkit and we're here if you need us, kind of thing.
You also spread Agile practice, don't you, out into the business as well. And I guess if they can see a benefit afterwards in the improvements that you make, then that's how to sell it to people, I think. Yeah.
I think just my little thing on it, I think it's something that actually we do. I think a lot of the Scrum teams do it on a small basis. So quite regularly, like every couple of months, my Scrum team will come together and we reflect on what we're doing as a team. So actually we're stopping the delivery work, because what we're doing is actually going, how are we feeling? How's the processes working? How's everything moving? Are we doing things the correct way? Are the scrums, daily scrums at the right time? Is it happening for everyone? And so we actually do it. We do little pauses to reflect and go, is this the best approach? And it does help with the continuous improvement. And like Charlie was saying, if you do it in manageable pieces, like with anything within Agile, you break it down into small achievable tasks. It's not a huge ask. If you suddenly go to the business, right, everyone stop work for a week, you're going to get negative feedback. It's making those small steps. It's also quite a common practice within, I don't want to say the Voldemort word, but in like scaled Agile. So within SAFe, I've been in companies which have implemented SAFe, and one of their sprints is like an innovation sprint, which is the same process where you pause, you take that stop, you have a fixed period of time, everyone comes together, you can do different things. And actually it's a really useful time, because what people do is like the developers will come together and do like the fast coding and I can't think of the word I was looking for then. But they come together and do development stuff. And also it gives the senior leadership time to have a look and go, right, what do we want as our priorities from a strategic level? The product owners come together and share knowledge with each other. And it's one of these things that actually, it happens quite a lot. From our experiences, we're working quite a small, quite an old mindset way of working within the university, being very waterfall. But there's many organizations out there, when you see how startups work and their quick mentality, they will regularly have innovation sprints, maybe have innovation days. They have days when they come together and reflect on to do certain things. So it's quite a common thing. There's a lot of information out there, if you just Google it, in regards to practices and achievable, like what you want to achieve from it. And I think like anything to a business, you create a business case, so to speak, and go, right, we're taking a pause and this is the deliverable we're getting at the end of it. They will become on board because they're actually seeing value behind it all without too much, again, like Stephen was saying, as long as there's not too much disruption. If it's something you can plan within your sprints and potentially just have like after every 6 sprints, you would take a half sprint, you plan it and go, this is sprint 6.5, which is a consolidation sprint. Again, it's something you can make it manageable. When you start looking at the velocity and you start looking at your road mapping, it reduces the impact on the business and also supports it. And you can, again, it's that whole reflect, inspect and adapt. You will see improvements from it without too much impact on the work.
Yep. Thank you.
Guys, we are close to the end, so I would ask for the very last time for tonight, for anyone who would like to ask any question, now is the moment, or as they say in a marriage time, or let's shut up until the rest of its life. So use your opportunity to ask question, guys. Does anyone have? I guess not. Well, okay. Nothing rests to me than to say a very thanks to Storm, Charlotte, and Stephen, and to you, Carl. Thank you for a magnificent meetup tonight. It was very, very inspiring. I would say one university lesson for all of us, because it reminded me on some university lessons that you need to solve before you start working, you know, so it was very inspiring for me. Thanks for your time, and I hope we are going to see each other next time. Have a great night. If I can say, yeah, it's night in Britain even, but it's 1 hour before us, so you still have 1 hour to finish your evening stuff. Thank you so much on behalf of Agile Humans. Guys, if you have any questions for Storm, Charlotte, and Stephen, don't hesitate to contact them on their social networks. They can put their links to a chat, or we are going to send you links by an email when we are going to send you a link with a YouTube record of this meetup session. So we won't forget that. And thank you guys for being part of Agile Humans tonight. I wish you have a great evening and to spend a week as much pleasant as you can. And for all participants who are celebrating Easter this weekend, I wish you happy Easter and make your weekend the best as you can. And great luck to everyone, guys.
Thanks again for the opportunity and being involved. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers out.
You're
Enjoy
welcome,
your
guys.
Easter.
Happy holidays and happy weekend.
You too. You too.
Have a great night.
Right.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.